Hello friends. As you know, war is war, and lunch is on schedule. Food, along with armaments and ammunition, remains one of the most important elements of effective warfare. And in this issue I will compare the food system and dry rations of the Red Army and the Wehrmacht. I think it would be very interesting for many to find out what the soldiers who fought in the bloodiest war in history ate. This topic is quite important, because on an empty stomach, the soldier with the MG40, that the Degtyarev machine gun or the Colt does not fight very well. So, Soviet ration against German. Let's start with the nutrition of the Wehrmacht soldiers. As I delved deeper into the topic, I became more and more amazed myself. In principle, I am not a strong supporter of a healthy diet, but I was somewhat dumbfounded. And it's not even that the ration was small or bad. A German soldier received about the same amount of calories as a Red Army soldier. The problem was in the food system itself, although the Germans a civilized nation. Here is an example of the daily food of an ordinary German infantry regiment before the war, that is, when the soldiers were in the barracks and not in the field. Breakfast, coffee, bread 350 grams, and that's it. That is, a young healthy man, before a whole day of classes and exercises, drank a mug of coffee without sugar, and ate a piece of bread. Those who are engaged in physical exercises will understand what it is. But at lunch, everything was just gorgeous. Soup with pasta, cue balls 140 grams, fat 20 grams, boiled potatoes 1500 grams. That is 1.5 kilograms of boiled potatoes, and it was mandatory every day. Now you understand why the Germans were so angry. Well, spinach with bacon 200 grams. Dinner, again, everything is very simple. Coffee, bread 400 grams with butter 50 grams, pork sausage 100 grams. If you translate this into an understandable language, then the soldier got up hungry. He was hungry all day. Overeat at lunch, but went to bed hungry. Wehrmacht soldiers received hot food once a day, and this was in peacetime in places of permanent deployment. As a result, hello gastritis, and in appearance, it turned out that the soldier received quite worthy 3,600 calories per day. In wartime, all this changed somewhat. In the war, a soldier suddenly received a ration of food all ready for combat conditions. It consisted of hot and cold foods. Cold. Bread 750 grams, sausage or cheese or canned fish 120 grams, jam or artificial honey, fat, lard, margarine, butter 60 or 80 grams, hot, potatoes 1000 grams, pasta or cereals 125 grams, meat 250 grams. I would like to clarify that I tried to unload the video as much as possible. Removed some numbers that do not fundamentally affect the result. For example, the amount of spices or tea received by the Germans. Did not mention non-principled facts, for example, about the German iron portion. This is about something else, about the fundamental differences between the Soviet and German food systems in the armed forces. Let's return to the German ration during the fighting. All the same song. All rations are issued once a day, and therefore hot food too. Distribution on the front line took place with the onset of twilight. Now let's imagine the situation. November, or let it be December, near Lviv or Murmansk. The soldier woke up after night in a cold trench, well, or not in a very hot dugout. Warm up with breakfast? No problem. A few frozen boiled potatoes are always at his service, well, another piece of frozen bread. Well, if a mug of hot coffee was added to this. But this was, as they say, optional. And on such a diet, the soldier sat in a cold trench until the evening. At 5 o'clock, as it gets dark, the distributor came and gave out a hot portion. Everything is good here. Some goulash, it's tasty and satisfying. But do you see soup on the list? That's right, it's not there. The German soldier did not receive any soups during the fighting. And it is quite logical that he tried to swallow as much food as possible while it was hot, and the gastritis hello again. Let's go further. At 10 or 11 o'clock, the same Lviv, the same December. The soldier goes to bed. Need a hot meal before bed? Certainly, he still had cold potatoes and frozen bread, albeit with lard. Now it is clear why the Germans constantly wrote that in Russia -50 is normal weather. From such feeding you will freeze even in May. For comparison, A soldier of the Red Army received hot food twice a day, just in the morning after a cold night and in the evening before a cold night. At the same time, only bread was in solid form. Everything else went into the boiler so that meal was liquid, rich and hot. Feel the difference. The result was not long in coming. In addition to the fact that the Germans were constantly freezing, they had real epidemics of stomach diseases. As an example, the 165th Reserve Division of the Wehrmacht. It consisted entirely of diseased stomachs and bore the unofficial name of the White Bread Division. The finale of this division, by the way, was quite sad. The division, it seemed, was trying to fight, but as soon as the Allies on the Western Front, by the way, the division was stationed in France, went on the offensive and the supply was broken, it actually ceased to exist from mass gastritis and ulcers. I am not at all trying to assert that the Germans were so stupid that they did not understand these things. I do not want to say that they did not try to correct the situation on their own in military units, especially since the order for requisition was given. I do not at all consider the command of the Wehrmacht to be idiots. They simply proceeded from the concept of a lightning war, where a soldier is on an intensive campaign for some short time, and this approach made it possible to supply the soldiers more or less regularly with at least cold potatoes, and then, in theory, they should have been sent to places of permanent deployment where at least there was soup. But when the brave Hans were put in the trenches for years, the systems completely stopped working. Another very important point that I want to talk about in this video is the field kitchen. And now we will find out whose field kitchen was more effective than the Red Army or the Wehrmacht. And here the Soviet one definitely wins because the German one was harder. It had 4 double boilers with glycerin between the walls as a non-stick device, and she also had one not very convenient archaism, namely wooden wheels. All plans to put her on a rubber wheels ended in failure. The very design of the field kitchen, with low-lowered blowers of the stoves, did not allow to reduce the diameter of the wheels, and the possibilities of German industry no longer allowed to remake the kitchen in wartime. She had something to do without field kitchens. Wooden wheels did not allow transporting the kitchen at a speed of more than 15 kilometers per hour. Permeability was also not so hot. Moreover, the closer to the front line, the more problems there were in the form of funnels and other inconveniences. And I won't tell you about how German cuisine feels in muddy clay. As the reenactors say, it cost a lot of effort to drag it. However, judging by the memoirs, the German chefs did not particularly care about this topic, for which they were, in quotation marks, dearly loved by the soldiers on the front line. Unlike the German one, the Soviet field kitchen switched to wheels from the Gazoo truck back in 1936. Until that time, the wheels were also wooden. The fact that the towing speed increased to 35 kilometers per hour sounds cool, but this advantage was not used effectively, since the horses were dragging the kitchen for the most part, and it continued during the war. Trucks have always had more important things to do. Another thing is that it has become easier to drag the kitchen on such wheels both in terms of effort and in terms of cross-country ability. And this is an important point, because the closer the kitchen can drive to the front line, the more chances the soldiers have for a hot lunch. If the conditions did not allow, both the Red Army and the Germans delivered hot meals by carriers to the front line in thermoses. Friends, if you like this video, support its promotion with your like, a comment, and especially a subscription. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Bye.